Rules for great writing. When I was at school and university, my writing had two aims: to hit the word count and to impress the teacher. That's literally all I wanted to do. Hopefully, if I threw in enough complicated language, I could convince them that I knew a lot more about the topic than I actually did. So I would end up handing in work like this. Dixons Retail plc, formerly known as DSGI, is a UK electronics retailer and one of the largest consumer electronics retailers in Europe. Now it owns Currys and PC World, following a merger with each of the businesses. However, on the 1st of November 2012, Comet, another UK electronics retailer, announced that it was filing for administration. Dixons chief executive Sebastian James has been quoted saying that Dixons is expected to benefit following the administration of Comet. Furthermore, perhaps as a direct result of Comet's administration and collapse, Dixons' share price has soared, trading at a 3.5-year high. This is why Dixons has offered a temporary Christmas jobs to some of those left unemployed by Comet. It's so dull, but it worked. It was true to hitting those two goals. It hit the word count, and by dropping in random Wikipedia knowledge, I could show off. Here's the thing though, I'm no longer at school. I'm a content writer, and this is horrible, horrible content. No one takes pleasure in reading this. Great content writing is simple, clear, and concise. Its only goal is to communicate a message. So I've had to shift the way I write. I've had to stop adding in random information, and I've had to retrain my writing to be shorter, clearer, and to get to the point. So here are some simple rules for you to follow so that you can also create great content writing and get you out of the school essay writing mind frame. Number 1, keep the audience in mind. Number 2, use simple but varied vocabulary. 3, any word that can go must go. And 4, get the headline right. They sound so simple because they are, but they're actually surprisingly difficult to stick to. So let's jump into them one by one. So the first rule is keep the audience in mind. And I told you that this would keep on popping up. So you want to target your piece to your target customer, their values, their perceptions, and their mindset. How much information do they even want? Who are they, and how much do they already know about this topic? How do they want to be spoken to? What's their reading level, and what language would they prefer? Would they quite enjoy hearing the jargon like utilise, strategise and commence? Or would they rather you just cut the bullshit and write with normal words like use, plan and start? If you're ever in doubt about what they want, I would suggest just put things in layman's terms. Speak to your reader as if you're speaking to a friend. Write how you speak. It's a huge rule that's overlooked by so many writers because they want to sound fancy and knowledgeable, much like me in my uni essays. But do you naturally speak in long, flowery sentences peppered with words like magnanimous and profligacy? I can't even pronounce them, but if you do regularly say them, then great. Keep it as part of your voice and make sure you're targeting a highly educated audience with a vocabulary that is just as wide as yours. But if you're part of the 99% who don't speak like that, then don't start now. Keep it short and simple. Your audience will thank you for it. And another great benefit to writing how you speak, you don't always have to please the grammar Nazis. I don't talk in proper English all the time, so I don't really worry about writing in proper English all the time either. Instead of sticking to strict grammatical rules, focus on your flow and making words sound as natural as possible. This will help your personality shine through your writing. Rule number 2, use simple and varied vocabulary. While you don't have to write in perfect English all the time, you definitely don't want anything that's going to break the flow or distract the reader. And if you stick to this rule, you are less likely to create any flow speed bumps that we mentioned earlier. If you use simple vocab, you're less likely to make a spelling error that makes them stop and question if that's the right spelling. If you use a varied vocabulary, you're not going to trip up the readers with duplication. Let's say you have a car repairs website, and this is the copy on your homepage. At Care Car Repair, we're here to take excellent care of you. If your car has been attacked with a key, bumped in the car park, knocked at a junction, or been involved in a serious accident, our excellent team of experienced mechanics will get your car back to its best. Now, there's not a major error in this. It might have slipped by you completely. Some readers might not notice it, but there are definitely some that will pause and subconsciously question if they've seen the word excellent before. and then they will go back to check. And this doesn't just apply to short website copy. Duplication in a paragraph or even 2 paragraphs later can still disrupt the flow. As ever, everything comes back to having great flow, and the best way to be sure of this is to read it out loud before publishing. The third rule is any word that can go must go. The best content writing is powerful and engaging, and one of the best ways to make your statements more powerful is to shorten them. Question every single word. Is it too weak? Is it too ambiguous? Is it even necessary? To help you look out for these sort of words, there are 3 types of words that you need to look out for. The first type is weak. This is where you're not really saying anything. Somewhat, somehow, a little, arguably, rather. None of these are particularly strong or powerful statements. So for example, if we use somewhat in a sentence, 2018's feather fashion trend is somewhat cruel. Just doesn't sound very powerful or like you even really mean it. 2018's feather fashion trend is cruel. Short, strong sentence that you sound like you mean and there's power behind. The second type of words to look out for are redundant. And again, with redundant words, you're not saying anything at all. As it's often said, notably, I think. For example, I think now is the time to take action. You've said it, so we already know that you think it, and adding the words I think just aren't really adding anything. And when you take them away, now is the time to take action. It's more interesting, it's shorter, it's more powerful. The words this and that can also be pretty redundant, and sometimes they can be a little bit dangerous and misleading as well. For example, the gender non-conforming and non-binary communities have always played a pivotal role in the fashion and beauty worlds, but they're seldom recognised, let alone celebrated. Although this continues, makeup brand Floyd is fighting for change. What exactly is the this referring to? Is it referring to the fact that the communities have always played a pivotal role? Is it that they're rarely recognised? Is it that they're not celebrated? It's just not crystal clear, and anything like that is a speed bump. The reader is going to pause, they're going to go back and try and figure out what the this or the that is referring to. So you need to make it clearer. The next type of word to look out for is hedging. This is where you're qualifying what you're saying when you don't really need to. It seems, it would appear. For example, if we put it would appear into a sentence, it would appear that she was right. It just doesn't sound as good as she was right. Hedging words just sap your authority away, and it makes it seem like you don't truly know what you're talking about. Don't get me wrong, statements like this are great when you're writing essays or when you're at school, because then you are putting down a net. You're saying to your teacher like, oh well, if I wasn't right, at least I put it seems, like at least I wasn't 100% sure. But you're a content writer now. You need to be 100% sure. If you're not 100% sure and you feel the need to write it seems or it would appear, you need to do more research so you know for sure, so that you can be confident in what you're writing and say it with purpose. So now that you've questioned all of the words that you use, it's time to question the points that you make. Have I made a simple point more complex than it needs to be? Your aim is to make a unique point in every sentence. If you find yourself writing statements like, as I mentioned, or as stated before, ask yourself if mentioning it again is going to add anything. You also need to make sure that your points are crystal clear. For example, the 50% reduction in iPhone X orders is reverberating through the supply chain, causing Samsung's stock price to fall. It's now unclear if the industry giant will hit 1.7 billion profit this quarter. Which industry giant isn't going to hit the prediction? Is it Apple or Samsung? If a point can be interpreted in different ways, then it needs to be changed. Finally, we need to question the sentence as a whole. Does it have a overused cliche? At the end of the day, when all is said and done, quick as a flash. All of these statements are such a waste of time. You're not adding anything useful to the piece, and it just sounds like you're trying to hit a word count. Next. Is it not free of double negatives? See what I did there? Sentences like this make the reader pause, they have to go back and try and undo the meaning in their head. Instead, you can simply keep the flow and shorten the sentence. Does it have double negatives? Double negatives are good in creative writing, or maybe if you're writing fiction, but they just don't really have a place in content writing. And finally, is your sentence way too long? If you read your piece out loud and you run out of breath, it's not going to work. Even when we're only reading in our minds, we can still run out of breath. The mind loses track of the original point the sentence was making, and it has to go back to check. As writers, it's our job to maintain the flow and break sentences down into bite-sized pieces. You don't want to put the reader through mental gymnastics for no reason. But it's true. If you are reading things out loud and you're running out of breath, the reader's going to run out of breath in their mind. And this sounds silly, but try it. Try and read this sentence and see if your mind just sort of gets foggy in the middle and has to go back. The same is true of your own writing. You want to break it down into bite-sized pieces. I'm still out of breath. So now let's take another look at my Dixons essay example. Dixons Retail PLC, formerly known as DSGI, is a UK electronics retailer and one of the largest consumer electronics retailers in Europe. It now owns Currys and PC World, following a merger with each of the businesses. However, on 1st November 2012, Comet, another UK electronics retailer, announced it was filing for administration. Dixons Chief Executive Sebastian James has been quoted saying Dixons is expected to benefit following the administration of Comet. Furthermore, perhaps as a direct result of Comet's administration and collapse, Dixons' share price has soared, trading at a 3.5-year high. This is why Dixons has offered temporary Christmas jobs to those left unemployed by Comet. Even more dull than I remember. But let's imagine it's 2012 again, but this time I'm a business blogger. My writers are genuinely interested in what Dixons is up to, but they're not so interested in how many random facts I can Google about Dixons. So the first thing we're going to do is scrap that whole first paragraph because it's nothing but fluff. However, that and furthermore are all redundant words. They're not adding anything to the piece. And perhaps it's a hedging word. It's undermining my authority, so all of those words can go. We've also got a dangerous this. Are Dixons offering Christmas jobs because Comet went under, or because their share prices are at an all-time high? So let's remove that as well. You don't have to edit things the exact same way that I do, but one trick that I like to do is highlight the best bits. So anything that's actually meaningful, I'm going to highlight in bold. Now that we can see what's actually important, let's mix it all up, trim it all the way down and fill in the gaps. Since Comet filed for administration, Dixons' share price has soared, trading at a 3.5-year high. Dixons are doing so well they're offering temporary Christmas jobs to some of those left unemployed by Comet. Chief Executive Sebastian James is expecting Dixons to benefit further. Now let's swap in some power words and make this a little bit more engaging. It's not just about shortening the word count, but also shortening the words. There's no need to say filed for administration when you can just say demise. A, it's more powerful. B, it's more interesting. C, it's still communicating the exact same message. Comet is gone. It's just said it in less words. This is okay because I'm pretending to write this for a blog piece. If you are a journalist or you're writing in a book, you're probably going to want to leave details like this in. And we can lose the trading at a 3.5-year high because Sword has sort of already communicated that they're doing very well. Since Comet's demise, Dixons' share price has soared. Dixons are doing so well they're offering temporary Christmas jobs to Comet's ex-employees. And Chief Executive Sebastian James is expecting even greater benefits yet. One final little trick that we can use is writing forwards rather than backwards. So in this piece, I've written it backwards. I've written about the reason first and then the action. Dixons' share price has soared due to Comet's demise. It's a small thing and it's not that bad, but all it means is that the reader needs a little bit more time to conjure up the mental image that Dixons is doing well. If I swap it around and put the action first, then I'm writing forwards. That image comes into the reader's mind the second they read the first words. The sentence becomes slightly more powerful. And there you go. Just because the topic is dull doesn't mean the writing has to be. The first piece still had all of those powerful statements in there. They were just dulled down by all the garbage surrounding them. Be warned though, if you cut things back too much, you're going to lose the message and the mental image completely. For example, if I wrote Dixons' share price has soared and the chief executive is expecting even greater benefits, I've lost the story and the reader has no idea why Dixons is doing well or why it's even interesting. Our final rule, number 4, get the headline right. The best content writing in the world is never going to be read if no one clicks the headline. Don't force a headline that doesn't work. If you have to explain your headline at all, you need a better headline. Even if you love it, and even if when you explain it, people totally get how smart and amazing it is, there's no use because you're not going to be there to explain it to everyone. It sucks, but what you like isn't always what works. For example, a About Me page on a website, I would love to call it something creative like Howdy or Lottie's Life, but neither of those are crystal clear, and so they're just going to get ignored. So even though it's plain and dull and boring, I just call it About Me because page titles like that work and people click on them. Equally with About, Our Story, Meet the Team, people know what that means, so they click on it. In times like that, you just have to save your personality for when they're on the page. Never ask a direct question in a headline. This one is really tempting. I don't know if it's just for me personally, but I have to stop myself from doing this all the time. And no matter how much I content write, the temptation never goes away. Let's say you have a financial advice blog. You've written an incredible post about how students can avoid debt while at university, and you're about to send it out to your mailing list, but you only want to appeal to students in your list. For me, the first subject line that pops into my head is, are you a student? Perfect. Only the students will open it. I'm an amazing copywriter. You hit send and you move on with your day. Now, put yourself in the shoes of the student. You're hungover, you've got 6 exams and 3 essays to prepare for, fast approaching deadlines, and you are really busy at procrastinating. And as part of that procrastination, you are going through your emails. You've got limited time because you're heading out again soon. You've got limited patience because your head is already pounding from the night before. Long story short, you don't give a damn about any of these emails. You're scrolling through and Are You a Student shows up, and you think, yeah, and then delete it. Why did you delete it? Because it asked you a question and you answered it. Why would you open it? There was nothing in that subject line that would suggest it was the best solution to your problem or that it even had a solution to anything. Now, let's imagine you're someone else completely. You're just about to go off to university. You're fresh out of school with zero financial knowledge. You are the perfect candidate to learn about avoiding debt at university. You also get an email asking, are you a student? You answer, nope, in your head, and you bin it. Whether you're copywriting or content writing, you have to imagine every reader you have is that student. Busy, no time, no patience, and no interest in anything you have to say or anything that you are doing. As a writer, it's your job to make them interested. With all that said, there is one small, sneaky exception to the rule. That's when your headline invokes curiosity or panic when people read it. For example, subject lines like, I called but you didn't answer, ? Are we still on to talk on Monday, ? Are you in or out, ? Just be warned that with titles like this, you are playing with fire. And if you're using panic to trigger people to open your emails, there had better be some amazing content that's 100% guaranteed to calm them back down.